Hey folks, it's Kimberly Hubscheid with the Entrepreneurs Rocket Fuel Web Summit and Entrepreneurs Rocket Fuel. I'm excited. I have Heather Pearce Campbell here with us today. She's going to be our legal expert, digging us out of a lot of our legal mistakes. She's going to talk about bite-sized legal basics for brilliant entrepreneurs. She is the legal website warrior, attorney, and legal coach for information entrepreneurs. Heather, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Kimberly. It's so good to be here.
Well, I'm really glad that you carved this time out of your schedule. We're actually recording this in advance in case something happens, because I know that you could get called in, probably called into court, but you travel a lot and you have all kinds of things going on. So in case anything happens, I wanted to get this recording done so that our people could have this content, because I know it's going to be super valuable.
Well, thank you. Well, I love it. I think this is a great approach.
Absolutely. So I know that you have a lot to share with us, and I don't want to derail from that. But before we get started, I'd love to know a little bit about you and how you got into this. So can you tell us a little bit about your why and your background and the whole thing?
Yes, absolutely. I love starting with why. It's one of the first things that I ask people and connect with people when I actually speak to an audience, right? Because we all have a why. And for me, so going back to my childhood, I was raised by an entrepreneur, had a very entrepreneurial father. I was a serious kid myself. And so I got a little talk from my dad at around 5 years old that was all about, you need to save for college. You need to do all these things if you're going to make it in life, right? So we started young at our house. And that was in part because my dad had the experience of growing up as one of 11 kids. His dad was a rancher. They moved all over pretty much every year. And so he was told that if he worked on the family farm, the family ranch, and took time even away from school to do that, that when it came time for college, that his dad would pay his way through college. Well, you can imagine that he spent his growing up time participating in the family ranch and doing a lot of work, and it came time for college and his dad could not pay his way to school. So there were lots of pieces of my dad's story that influenced the way that he raised us, but it was mostly that he wanted to teach us to be self-sufficient, and that messaging came out at a very young age. And when you connect with entrepreneurs, sometimes you can see that like people just come that way and others like develop into that because of certain life experiences. And for me, it was probably a little of both. I think I naturally have an entrepreneurial nature. I think being in the family that I was. So it just set me on a path at a young age where I did things that were unusual for the age, getting paper routes young, walking the neighborhood like second grade, asking, could I rake yards? Could I rake leaves? Could I mow people's lawns and earn money? And what it meant is that by the time I went to law school, I still had a very entrepreneurial mindset. And some things happened during law school. I lost my mom to cancer. It changed the course of even my legal trajectory, being willing to do somebody else's work. I wasn't willing to spend time doing work that I didn't care about. So after law school, I launched my own career, my own practice, and went into business for myself. And for the majority of my legal practice, which has been 18 years now in Seattle, I serve entrepreneurs and people in business. So it's been a career that I love. It's an area of work that I care a lot about because I have a big heart for entrepreneurs. And after quite a few years of practicing law in the traditional legal industry, I could see how people in a particular entrepreneurial space, small businesses and what I call information entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, online educators, speakers, authors, they are not well served by our traditional legal industry, right? So I set about to actually create a second business to serve those folks in a very different way. So I have my Pearce law practice, and then I started a second business, Legal Website Warrior, which is how you and I connected. It's my online business that serves entrepreneurs in this space.
Well, I love this. Great story. It's actually very similar to mine. And I spent my time in corporate and was singing somebody else's song, and eventually didn't want to do that. Was in golden handcuffs, had to go into entrepreneurship full time and make that decision. That was hard to do. But I also brought my son into the business and taught him to be an entrepreneur when he was 15 and a half. We launched a business together. So a lot of similarities there. And I love your style. I love your personality. So super glad to have.
You. I love that you are bringing your son into business, or that you have done. I just think that's so great. I look forward to the day that I get to do that with my kids.
Super fun. And I love that they started early at age 5. That's awesome. So great story. Okay, cool. So let's get into it. So I know that entrepreneurs make a lot of mistakes, and mostly it's not really that they're making these huge mistakes. It's just, they're like this. They're like, I don't want to know. I know it's bad, but I'm hoping that I'm not going to get in trouble. And, just that they look the other way, because they're trying to focus on sales, and it can really bite you. If you've ever been in corporate, you know that there's a legal department there, and it's there for a reason. You have to be able to protect yourself. But not everything needs to be done in the entrepreneur world. So it's great to have somebody like you as a specialist walk us through the most important things to start with.
Absolutely. And to your point about, kind of people having blinders on, or being so focused on this thing that they're not looking over here at this other thing, right? And it's so true. People generally don't intend to ignore certain aspects of their business, but it's just the case that the business building journey, requires that we do the best we can with what we have. And we all have blind spots. And it's also the case that, like I mentioned, the traditional legal industry does not serve people in this space in the way that they need it. And so that creates a very high barrier to entry. And I first of all want to acknowledge that, so that people kind of take that personal load off of being like, oh, I've ignored that piece of it, or I haven't gotten, this taken care of. Like, it's okay. I get it. And there's very good reasons why that happens. So, I tend to just really be a believer that you need to meet people where they are, and I'm okay with wherever people are at in their journey, including what supports they have in place for their business. And the other thing I'm committed to doing, and I call it breaking the black box legal model.
Okay.
Right. Getting inside of the legal marketplace and getting the information that you need as an entrepreneur is a bit like trying to break into a black box. It's very expensive. Like I said, there's high barriers to entry, connecting with the right attorney who understands your business model, who understands
an arm and a leg, and
even just to explore, like, do I like this person? Could I work with them? Do they understand my business? And that's it can be a very painful experience for a lot of people to even find the right attorney, let alone start to get the information they need that is going to turn them into a more strategic decision maker on behalf of their own business.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
So you have 5 legal basics, or are you doing 5, or what are we doing? What are we doing?
I've got a couple sets of 5. So the 5 legal basics, which is the report, that's the gift that everybody gets access to.
Okay. So you got to stay to the end, and you're going to get a checklist, which is, you're going to get.
Checklist is the VIP.
So we got them all confused. I apologize. So let me straighten that out. So we're going to talk today about the bite-sized legal basics for brilliant entrepreneurs, and there's about 5 things we're going to talk about. Is that correct?
That's right.
And then we have a downloadable that if you stay to the end of this talk, you're going to get 5 legal basics for online entrepreneurs. So specifically for our people, coaches, authors, speakers, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, that's us. It's going to be directly geared toward you, and you're going to be able to grab that as your downloadable. Then we also have a gift for the VIPs, which is coming, which is a checklist. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Sound good?
Totally. Okay. No, good breakdown. And the 5 things that we're covering right now that's a little bit different than my 5 legal basics in the report is actually my 5 bucket framework for business protection, right? And we're gonna chunk this down into bite-sized things so that it's consumable, so people can understand the roadmap. They can start to look in each bucket and say, oh, okay, what do I have here? What's missing here? What can I check off the list here? And they can feel a lot more confident that they're looking in the right places for their legal support.
I love it. Okay, great. So where do we start? What's the first bucket?
Yes, absolutely. Bucket number 1 is business structure, right? And people need to understand the vast majority of small businesses in the United States, it's like 60%. And by the way, a small business is defined as any business making less than $3 million a year, right? So that's most everybody, including everybody who's going to be probably on this summit. Most of those folks are sole proprietors. meaning that they do not set up a proper business structure that sets their business liability separate from their personal assets, right? And that is really goal number one. If you are in it to win it, which I know anybody showing up on this summit is, if you are committed to really creating a business that is thriving, that you love, you have to start with business structure, right? And it's the only way to actually tell not only the IRS, but the court system and your clients, my business is over here, my personal assets are over here, right? So you have to separate out business liability from personal assets.
Now let's talk about that. So a sole proprietorship is actually personal, right? So those are on top of each other. Oh, they're separate?
No. It's a sole proprietorship means you have not filed paperwork with your state that says, hey, I want to be an LLC. I want to be a C Corp. I want to be one of those things treated as an S Corp, right? So it just means that maybe you've registered a DBA like Bob Jones Plumbing or whatever, right? But you haven't actually set up a proper business structure. So sole proprietorship means that from all those perspectives, the IRS, the court system, etc., you and your business are basically treated as one and the same. There's no distinction. So this means that if you have any personal assets in your life, like bank accounts, a home, vehicles, if you're in a community property state and you're married and your spouse has assets, those are at risk through your business.
Absolutely. Until you file and become one of these other entities. And
That's
then
right.
you're recognized as sole and separate from your entity. So an LLC is oftentimes the first one, and usually that's at a threshold. It starts to make sense in California for businesses to do that. At what level do you think?
Well, it really depends. And I am a firm believer that we need to plan for where we're going, not for where we're at.
Got it. Okay.
Right? And people often get this backwards. They plan for where they're at and they will talk to an accountant or to somebody who helps with their books or their finances, and they'll say, well, you're just not making enough to do this. And I really challenge people on their thinking around this. I mean, yes, there may be a point where financially it makes a big difference to do something a certain way, but for the most part, and this is one of the things I talk about in regards to business structure, as soon as you commit, and what I mean by commit is like mentally, financially, everything commit, and you say, here's my business, I'm going to set up the structure, I'm going to file the paperwork, I'm going to pay the filing fees, I'm going to do my quarterly filings, I'm going to treat my business like a business. There is a success mindset.
Oh, yes.
That is very different than if you're just kind of treating your business like a hobby business and you're not really taking care of it.
That's a really good point. I hadn't really connected those two, but it's absolutely true. Every time I turned a business that was sort of like, I think it's going to start, I'm not sure exactly where we're going to go with it. And then I was like, got it. Now I'm ready to launch. That's when I went to an LLC, and it does feel mentally different. Like you're not fooling around anymore. You have understanding, you have structure around it, and you become more successful because you start thinking in terms of that's a business and it needs to be built rather than that's an idea and I'm still brainstorming. Really good point.
It's absolutely right. Well, and it often surprises people, but it truly is a side benefit of being all in versus not really taking care of your business in the way that it needs.
Yeah. And it adds structure for those of us who struggle with that, right? The quarterly filings and the end of year meeting and the group of people who are coming together to talk to you, your chairs, who are coming to talk to you and discuss your business and things like that are all things that happen now because you're an LLC. I like where you're going with this.
That's right. It actually causes you to make other decisions that are in alignment with business growth that you otherwise would not have been forced to make.
I agree. That's really a cool mindset shift. I like that. I haven't heard anybody say that before, and I really like that because most lawyers will say, well, when you get to about this position, then you need to. But from a mindset perspective, doing it earlier is way better.
Earlier is like it is, and it is going to speed your growth for a variety of reasons. One, not only because of your own mindset, but also because clients and people that you work with, colleagues, affiliates, JVs, they see you differently. Once they see that you have a business that's incorporated, they will treat you differently than if you are signing all your contracts in your individual name.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Hashtag you're not wrong.
Hey, I love being not wrong. Um,
I love it. Okay, so what's number two?
So number two is business contracts.
Okay.
So this is a big bucket. If you think visually of business structure, literally think of it like a big solid platform, right? It can be metal, it can be wood. Visually think of your business structure as the foundational piece, the platform. Business contracts, I like to describe as like machinery, gears, nuts, and bolts. It's like all the things you're doing in your business is a piece of machinery sitting on that foundation.
Mm.
Your business contracts bucket is all about protecting that machinery. So what I mean by that is that you should have, and business contracts is one of the bigger buckets, by the way. It's where I spend a lot of my time with clients and people that I support. But any exchange of value in your business should have a contract in place around it, right?
Okay.
And what I mean by exchange of value is like if you are, let's take the online space, for example, you're publishing information online, you're delivering tips and advice and video blogs and written blogs and articles. That's an exchange of value. People can show up and consume that information. They receive value in doing that. You need to have contracts in place around that exchange. Well, that particular contract would be website terms and conditions for anything that's generally available. Now, maybe you're collecting information online. You're growing a database, right? You're having people opt into your list or get your freebie or your giveaway, right? You need some contractual terms in place around that. That's your privacy policy. Maybe you are providing one-on-one services or group coaching or workshop or live events. There's any number of things that you can be doing in your business to actually deliver your services. That also is an exchange of value, and each one of those needs a contract in place that governs what that exchange looks like. What you need to do with your intellectual property to protect it, meaning putting licensing terms in place around letting people know here's how you can use it, here's how you can't use it. Putting terms in place around your refund policy or limitations of liability or any of the number of things that should be covered in a contract involving your services, your intellectual property, and trying to contain your liability. So business contracts is big. It applies to your direct services. It applies to your information. It also applies to the ways that we grow our businesses through third-party relationships, right? If you hire an independent contractor, if you work with affiliates, if you work with JVs, you should have terms and contracts in place for each of those things.
Definitely. And be careful when you're hiring independent contractors. If you're just saying they're an independent contractor instead of an employee, you're going to get caught on that one. So be very careful about that. But using independent contractors and having contracts in place with them really can save you. And if you ever need it, it's very, very valuable for a lot of reasons. In fact, if you just want to go to collections, right, and you want to get your money from somebody and they're slow paying, as soon as you turn it into collections, one of the first things they'll say is, do you have a contract? Do you have any terms and conditions with these people? What's been signed, so that it's not just an invoice. So for example, for all of our Web Summit speakers, we have a contract in place, a memorandum of understanding for each one of our speakers, so that they know what they're supposed to do and we know what we're supposed to do, and we have an agreement on that.
That's
so
right.
Really excellent points. Excellent.
That's right. Well, and the thing I like to tell people generally about contracts is a lot of folks can tend to feel, especially if they're newer in business, especially if they're just starting to build in the kind of supports that they need, they can feel like a contract is a fence, kind of like a fence between neighbors, like here's the line, don't cross it. But I like to invite people to think about contracts as a container. They actually help guide and protect the relationship, and they can make facilitating, difficult conversations or resolutions over certain things that go wrong a lot easier. And so contracts really are there to support both people. If they're well done, they're clear. It's really about putting down into written form what's trading hands, what the material terms are, so that, I joke about this, but it's really true. Like, I've got a steel trap. I say this, and yet I am human and I still forget things, or like we still fill in the gaps. And this is the human experience. I remember very early on in law school, doing some training around witnesses, right? Interviewing witnesses and having to talk with people about their recollections. And you could have a video of something that occurred, and everybody's seeing the same video, and you interview 3 or 4 people about it. You're going to get different accounts from every person. And one, they're either going to be factually correct or not. And the reality is, in the human brain, we cannot remember everything. And so we do a lot of deduction. We fill in the gap.
Mm.
And this is just how humans work. And so, what I tell people is there's lots of opportunities in business for things to go wrong, not because people intend that, but just because we're human and because of the way that our minds work.
Mm-hmm.
So contracts are really just there to help protect you against the experience of being human, against those little.
Oh, that's cute. I like it. All right. What's number 3? Because I don't want to run out of time. I want to make sure that we get to everything.
Absolutely. Number 3 is business insurance. We won't spend a lot of time in this bucket, but it's really important to mention because I don't want people to ignore it. And the thing to understand about business insurance is it protects against certain kind of risks where there are no other kinds of protection.
Mm.
Right? So you can't swap this out for anything else. So for example, if you have a physical business or you have something unique about your business, maybe it involves deliveries or workers driving cars or, whatever, there are certain things that you cannot protect in any other way except for insurance.
Yeah, that's really important. And I do have insurance in a variety of different ways. There's an umbrella. There's E&O, errors and omissions, which is important especially for coaches. Don't you think? Do you think? I should ask you.
Yes, for anybody that's a licensed professional, as well as, people who are experts delivering information through whatever their field is, right?
Well, yep, absolutely. Everybody on this summit should be an expert of in something, right? So they should be able to have that sort of coverage. Really, really good point. All right. And what other kinds of insurance?
General liability, right? So there's general liability insurance available for most businesses, including coaching businesses. It used to be that there weren't policies available for that field. That's definitely evolved. There's actually up to 13 different kinds of business insurance policies available to small businesses in the United States. And my recommendation on this is that people connect with an insurance broker. If you don't know one, you ask for referrals from people in your network who are doing similar kinds of business and are maybe a step or 2 ahead of you, right? So get a great referral and connect with a broker who understands the marketplace, because if you need maybe a couple different policies, you can often get them bundled if you go through a single provider, but you want somebody with eyeballs on the whole marketplace so that they can really best match the product to your business and not be tied to an individual insurance provider.
I agree. Yeah, that's a really good point because you want somebody that's going to look out for you, not sell the product.
Not sell their product. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
That's right.
good. Really good tips. Excellent. And okay, so what's number 4?
Number 4 is having an intellectual property, so also called IP for short, having an IP protection plan.
Okay.
And so IP I put into its own bucket for a couple reasons. One is that intellectual property, especially in the group that I serve, is vastly underestimated. People do not think in terms of IP nearly as much as they should. They think like, oh, Starbucks and Nike and Google and like big companies develop IP, right? Actually, for the audience that I serve, information entrepreneurs, intellectual property can make up to 90% of the value of your business.
Yeah.
It is the thing. Like if you're developing systems, frameworks, bodies of work, video content, articles, IP is the thing, right? So I want it in its own bucket so that people actually think of it as a separate thing worth protecting in their business.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Like when you were doing an IP protection plan, you're saying like, I'm thinking up this thing. This is how I understand it. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is, I think, how most entrepreneurs see it. Like if I have a coaching plan and I have like an 8-step plan, that is my IP. Is that correct so far?
That's right. And basically, so intellectual property, I mean, it comes in different forms, but anytime you create something in the world that takes tangible form,
Mhm.
and especially is unique to you, it's proprietary to you, whether it's a system, a framework, anything that you create is intellectual property. Now, whether it's protectable, you have to get into some different questions around that, but there's different ways to protect intellectual property.
Okay. All right. I definitely see that. Now, if you're going to be protecting it, are you
Mhm.
going to have to go to court to fight if somebody steals your 8-step plan? And is that going to be that's a different category altogether, right?
Depends. It would be in the same bucket, meaning it still has to do with your IP. It's
Mhm.
different than your protection plan. So we can walk through what that looks like a little bit, but mostly what I want people to understand is that the earlier in your business journey you can understand IP and start recognizing, like, first of all, how you're creating it, what current intellectual property assets you already have in your business. If you've got a signature course or program, you have a business title worth protecting, you have a tagline or a short phrase that you use regularly. Maybe you've created a very unique signature course name that's worthy of its own protection. The content inside of your course, especially if you have frameworks, systems, anything that is really proprietary, all of that is intellectual property, and each on its own is an IP asset. You need to track that. You need to create an inventory of what you are not only have already created, but what you are on the path to create, so that you can understand where protection fits in and you can prioritize your IP needs.
Got it. Okay. Very, very good. That's really helpful. All right. We still have one more. What's the last one?
Yes, and really quick on IP, I just want to touch base really quickly that there are trademark registrations, which people often think of.
Hmm. And a good friend of mine definitely has that. Runs the Spiral Dynamics brand, and it is trademarked.
I
Uh,
love
and
Natasha.
she does have the trademark on it, and it's been there for years and years. But it is a fight if people go after and try to use stuff under the Spiral Dynamics brand.
Yeah.
But it's something that you need to have protection on if it sells really well and it's selling for you, and then other people jump in and they're like, oh, this is the same thing and it's called the same thing and it is the same thing, then they can be making money without actually and using your brand to do that.
Totally. And then you can actually end up losing the rights to your trademark if you don't police the marketplace. So, yeah, it's people often think like, oh, once you have a trademark, it's clear sailing. No, you have to police the marketplace.
Wow.
And yes, sometimes it may require lawsuits. There are other strategies besides lawsuits for getting people to take things down. I do a lot of coaching on those topics to help entrepreneurs learn how to do some of that themselves if it's appropriate. But, the goal is that we avoid lawsuits, but sometimes they are necessary, and it largely depends on who's on the other side.
Okay, so trademarks. Was there another one as well?
Trademarks, copyright. So those are the federal registrations that people should consider in regards to their IP assets. Trademarks, again, protect business names, short phrases like a tagline. Copyrights really protect the body of your work, right? And I want people briefly to understand that when you create a work in the world, you automatically have copyrights to that work, meaning that you don't have to go get a registration to be able to put the copyright symbol on your work. But if you want to enforce your rights to that work and be able to recover attorney fees, treble damages, etc., that's where the copyright registration comes in very handy. It will make it easier to enforce your rights. And then finally, the third strategy in that bucket that people often don't think of actually relates back to bucket number 2, which is contracts. Putting terms in place around your IP, especially when you're selling it in a digital format or in a course that says, here's how you can use it, here's how you can't use it, right? And then you've got a contractual agreement in place around your IP.
Got it. Well, really, really helpful. Awesome. All right, can we go to number 5 now? Are you ready?
Totally. Yep. Number 5 is a bucket that I joke about. People want to stick their head in the sand, especially in regards to this bucket.
Oh, I know what it's going to be. I know what it's going to be. Terms and conditions of GDPR and all that stuff, right?
No. Although that all falls into bucket number 2, business contracts.
Okay.
That's all the legal terms and contracts. But yes, there's a lot in that bucket. Dispute resolution strategy is
Ooh,
bucket
okay.
number 5. And this is one that, a lot of attorneys don't talk about because they're there to solve your disputes once they happen.
Got it.
I'm here to try to prevent those disputes from happening. And so dispute resolution strategy in my mind is really, for most small businesses and entrepreneurs, is really about having a communication strategy, right? So the biggest thing that leads to disputes is having some kind of misunderstanding, generally involving a communication that goes sideways that we don't handle well, that we either ignore for too long or we don't respond in the right way. We end up triggering the other person. They get really upset and they see the legal process as the only way to fix that problem, right? And there's a lot that we can do early on to change the course of that happening to avoid what is one of the biggest risks to our business, which is litigation.
Well, really good point. I definitely agree. That's if you have that in place, it can really save you when the time comes. For attorney's fees can add up very, very quickly. But attorney's fees are nothing compared to litigation process, and it can be 10 times and way, way more than 10 times your
Oh,
regular attorney's fees. So protection is definitely worth the investment.
yeah, it's brutal. Well, and dispute resolution strategy, once you have some coaching and understanding around what it takes to communicate well in your business and avoid small problems becoming big problems, there's a book that I'll recommend to people. Everybody who hears this should just go to Amazon and buy this book. It's called Difficult Conversations. It is by the folks that lead the program on negotiation. It's PON at Harvard. I've been to Harvard Law for a week and studied with those guys. I read all their books in law school. Like, this is a topic I care a lot about and that I've studied for 22 years, 21 years. And so the book Difficult Conversations, easy to read, harder to implement. That
Mm.
we all have opportunities, numerous opportunities in our business, more so than we do in other places in life, for things to go a little bit sideways. And having this book and using this strategy will help people begin to unwind some of the things that go wrong in challenging conversations and handle them the right way to create a win-win, to create successful outcomes for themselves and for their clients or for their business partners, their staff, whatever.
All right, fair enough. Wow, really good information. I'm super glad that we got that. I think that's really, really good tips for our people. They're going to save a lot, or at least save a lot of risk. Being able to make sure that they're doing things upfront to take care of business, to treat it like a real business, and to make sure that they have all the protections in place that they possibly can, legally speaking, so that they won't be set up for frustrations later on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and at least, with this, I mean, you have to spend a little bit of time in each bucket, but you have the map. You at least go like, okay, I've done this. I can check this one off, or I need to spend a little bit more time here, or I need to learn what's here. Right. But that way people have the map and they can start to feel confident they're looking in the right places.
Awesome. Fantastic advice. All right, great. Now, as promised, we said you were going to get 5 legal basics
Yep.
for online entrepreneurs. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yep.
Tell us what they're going to get in that download.
Yeah, absolutely. So if they go to that link, that report, and I just updated it, by the way, like 2 weeks ago, it's a really detail-rich report that, first of all, is going to shed a lot of light on the legal landscape in the United States. So that's a separate topic that I present on, and it's a lot of information about the litigation risk in the US, and particularly in regards to small businesses. So to give you a quick highlight, over 15 million lawsuits get filed every year in the US. Of the civil lawsuits, 52% of those are against small businesses.
Oh, that's so
It's
sad.
very sad, and it's a very high number, and I'm good at numbers, and still, like, it's shocking when you analyze the landscape and get numbers. These are from our US court systems. These are from legitimate sources that track these numbers. And so I just need people to understand they don't operate in a bubble, and that there is real risk being in business, but there are also things they can do about it. And
Yeah.
so that report, if they will follow those numbers, I have a whole bunch of numbers that break down where the risk happens, what are the biggest buckets, what are some steps they can do to protect themselves against those things. And it gives them 5 legal basics to get started on so that they are on their way on the path of, like, fulfilling their own legal roadmap.
Yeah, I like it. Very nice. So thank you for doing that and making that available. Now, if people want to work with you directly and get their stuff in gear in order to make things happen, we don't have a lot as entrepreneurs to spend, but you put together sort of a workshop for us. Is that right? It's a
Yes.
website protection package workshop. Is that right?
Absolutely. So for folks in this space, right, based on your and my first conversation about, who participates in the summit, who your people are, the online, especially now, I'm in the middle of the crisis that we're in right now, online presence and online business building is like so important. It is just critical to the success of all of our businesses. So this is my favorite offer because, one, it's my most popular offering. Every client, every person in the online space needs this. It's my website protection package. The thing that's missing in the traditional legal industry is that people think like, oh, I've got this document, I can just plug it in and be done. It does nothing to transform the way that they actually lead their business. It does nothing to transform the way that they make decisions in their business. So my goal through any of my services are to offer both the transformational education as well as the tools that they need. So this workshop combines both of those things, education plus the tools. People have paid me $5,000 to put this same level of protection in place for their businesses and online platforms. If somebody wants to buy the automated version right now through my website, they pay $13.97. I'm offering this workshop to this group right now for $5.97.
Oh my gosh, that's a really good deal. So less than half price, guys. You need to grab it now while you have a chance. This will get a complete protection package for your website. It's a workshop where you're live in this. This is not like a video,
They
right?
get to ask me questions. We get to apply it to their specific businesses. I walk them through how to implement them right away so that within, hours, if not a day or two of that workshop, they have their whole online platform protected. Their websites, their membership sites, their landing pages, they understand what they need and they have the confidence to turn those tools on and use them in the right ways.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. Actually, it makes me think of somebody that I need to connect you with because he builds out websites and it would be a great match for that particular group is to bring the entrepreneur whose website they're building into and to connect you with that. So, all right, fantastic. Really good stuff here for us today. I really appreciate it. I think you would be crazy not to grab that because for $600 you can get your website protected and have a conversation and be able to get one-on-one help in a Q&A environment with a legal expert that can point you down the right path and help you with the other things that you need as well and answer your questions live. And you forget all that Zoom download stuff or, like Zoom legal, what's it called? Legal Zoom. It's like
Legal Zoom.
boilerplate templates that don't fit your business and are going to get you in more trouble in some cases than they're worth, can be very difficult. So this is custom for you and at a very, very reasonable price. So thanks for making that happen.
Yeah.
You actually have a gift for our VIPs as well. Is that right?
That's right. So this gift is called my Business Builder Basics Quick Start Guide.
Okay.
It is literally like a 9-page checklist. It is designed to save people dozens and dozens of hours trying to research what they need to do from a legal and structural perspective in their business.
Nice. That's fantastic. Okay, so if you haven't already upgraded to VIP, I don't know why you wouldn't. All right, this is absolutely fantastic. Holly, thanks so much for spending time. Heather, sorry. Thanks so much for spending time with us today. I really appreciate that. We've learned a lot. We've gotten a lot. You've been very, very, very generous with your offers. So thank you very much for that. Before we let you go, any final words for our crew?
I really love to serve people in this space. I mean, if they're ready for this type of support, I'd love to work with them. End of the day, what I have told my clients in business for, 18, 19 years is if you don't treat your business like a business, nobody else will. So my goal is to help make that easier and more accessible for everybody in this space who is a mission-focused entrepreneur trying to build their business.
Very well said. I couldn't have done better. That was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Kimberly.
Appreciate you as well. You brought a lot of value to our group today. So, all right, folks, that was Heather Pierce Campbell. She is the legal website warrior. She's an attorney and legal coach for information entrepreneurs. That's us. So it was perfect that she came and talked to us. If you haven't already upgraded to VIP, I don't know why you wouldn't, because you get a recording of everything that we talked about here. Plus, you're going to be able to get access to a lot of gifts from many of our speakers that are worth thousands of dollars at this point. It's every day there are more getting added. So grab that while you can, and grab your VIP ticket for just 97 bucks. Plus, you get to play in the cool kids room, in the VIP room with our speakers, and you get first priority for Q&A. All right, folks, I'm Kimberly Homscheid with Entrepreneurs Rocket Fuel and the Entrepreneurs Rocket Fuel Web Summit, and we'll see you back at the top of the hour. Cheers.